Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm Jan Kane from the Association of Lifelong Learners, and it's my job today to present, to introduce our speaker for this morning, Mary Schalk. Mary started at Partners in Prevention in 1993, and I've known her most of that time. I was previously on the board of directors and a volunteer for the organization that she works for when she was a volunteer. Her other link to this organization is that Maggie Clay, who this room is named after, whose picture is outside the door, also helped to start and continue Partners in Prevention and was a good friend to Mary and I also through that group. So welcome, Mary.
Thank you. Yes. Maggie still touches so many of us, I'm sure. And I'll give you that little bit of background story about Maggie. Maggie was on the board of community mental health and was heading up a committee that was looking at substance abuse prevention in the community. And their committee wrote a plan. And about that time, money became available through the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. And they submitted their plan for that grant, and that grant was awarded, and that was the beginning of the organization that I'm now part of. When that grant ended, there were a number of us as staff and volunteers that said, you know, we've started something that's pretty important in our community, and we don't want to see it end. And so Maggie was really instrumental then in funding the nonprofit that still continues to today. So that's who we are. We go by a couple of names. Partners in Prevention is the common name we use. Our full legal name is Northeast Michigan Community Partnership. One of the reasons why we decided to shorten the name is people were confusing us with Northeast Michigan Community Mental Health or Northeast Michigan Community Services Agency, which are both much more massive than we are. Although our missions align somewhat, it was confusing to people. And so we shortened our name to Partners in Prevention. I put this hide and seek up here because where we're located can be a little hard to find. Our address is Chisholm Street, but you can't get there from here. So we're located within the First Presbyterian Church at the corner of Long Rapids Road and 23. And you have to actually take Long Rapids Road to Gilchrist Street to get into our facility. So, you know, if you ever need to visit us, you need to kind of understand that whenever we're hosting trainings, we make sure people understand that so that they can find us. If you use your GPS and put in that address, it's not going to help you find how to get to us exactly. So we have a huge mission. We have a tiny little staff. And we have a pretty big service area. We cover Alcona, Alpena, Montmorency, and Presque Isle counties. And it's good that many of the partners that we have in the community also serve that region. But here's our mission. We restated this just within the last year, that we help our community raise children who are safe, lovable, loved, and resilient, and also helping adults increase their knowledge and skills to address life's challenges. So that sounds pretty broad. And so as I talk about more about our services, you'll have a better sense of what that means. I'm the program director at Partners in Prevention. Ruth Fleck is our program manager. And then we have our financial person, Kim Borowski, and we're all part-time. And so we have lots of work to do and lots of commitment to getting that done. We, in the last couple of years too, stated our values. And see, Maggie comes to mind again because underpinning was one of Maggie's words. If you knew Maggie, you heard her say that a lot. But we really wanted to take the time to identify our values in a way that would help people understand who we are and what we believe in. We are an independent nonprofit organization. There's no national association that we're connected to. We are independent, but that really allows us to do some things in ways that others cannot. You know, we have that ability to bring groups of people together around topics and issues where many of our partners who come to the table in those efforts, they've got mandates and restrictions in what they can do and how they can spend our time. So that independence really allows us the freedom to meet people where they are, meet their needs in the way that really works for our community. We really do believe in cultural competence and understanding what that means in Northeast Michigan. It means something very different than people in other regions of the country or somebody that has a much more massive organization. And so we really value that we have that ability to do what we need to do. That doesn't mean we jump all over the place. We don't jump on the newest bandwagon and just, chase money. We stay true to who we are, but it does allow us some flexibility to be able to meet people's needs. So although we don't specifically name diversity and inclusion and equity in those terms, we feel like these values that we've defined really do meet that need. It's really important to us that we are meeting people where they are, that we're not just talking about those kinds of concerns, but that we model them. We have great respect for the people who attend our programs. Whatever life circumstances brought them to a place where they may be having some challenges, we get that. We all have our challenges. It's really about relationships. We don't have a clinical way of approaching our programs. It's really about people to people. And so being able to approach people without being judgmental, to be able to model empathy and respect, really valuing viewpoints, different viewpoints, because we know that really enriches what we're doing when we're hearing from other people. And we know that everybody who comes into some kind of contact with us, that they have their own gifts to contribute. Even if somebody's coming to a training and they feel like this is a topic I don't know much about, they still have their own wisdom to share. And so it's important that we recognize that and value that and help everybody that's participating. We're not there as the talking heads and the experts who know everything, because I have come to learn that even the people who are the expert in whatever the topic is, they don't know everything, right? So we need each other and we need to rely on each other and value what other people have to bring. And we really are about figuring things out. How can we do things better? When we deliver a program that has been developed by someone else, it's really important that we are sticking to the way it was developed in maintaining the fidelity of that program. We're not just taking it and tearing it apart and going and doing our own thing. Because if it's based on research, we know that we need to stick to some of those important points that make it valid. But we also know that sometimes you need to tweak things a little to fit the community so that the language fits, so that people's situations fit. And so in that way, we're always looking at how do we improve? We value getting feedback from the people who come into contact with us, and also taking a hard look at ourselves sometimes and saying, what can we do better? We're having a staff meeting later today, and there's something I want to say to my fellow staff about something that I did last week that I feel like wasn't the best approach. And so it's time for me to own up to that and say, looking back, I wish I would have said that in this way or done it in this way instead of the way I did. Self-care is something that we promote in every single program we do. Some of the programs it's built in, and where it's not built in, we put it there. One of the programs that I'm about to talk about, it had self-care as a complete module on its own at the end of the class. And we said, we're not happy with that. We need to be talking about self-care from the beginning, because we all need to be our best so that we can be our best for other people as well. We have access to so many wonderful resources. And we all know there's lots of stuff out there on the internet, and some of it's great and some of it's not so good. So, we are very careful in making sure that we're vetting information that we're sharing with others so that it's the best, the most current, accurate information that is out there. So I happen to love Winnie the Pooh. But even acknowledging that downtime is a good thing. So just give you a moment to read and absorb that. You know, sometimes what we need to do is just take a break. And actually, my screen on my computer says I have to remind myself daily, I'm a human being, not a human doing. Because sometimes we get so wrapped up in all the chores and the tasks and feeling like, this was something personally for myself. I had to question that to just sit, felt wrong, like morally wrong. And, it's not wrong. It's something I've had to fight against as we're promoting self-care, that we're maintaining that good self-care ourselves. And so for yourself, I encourage you to sometimes just take a moment to enjoy sitting, listening, soaking up the sun, whatever it is. So a lot of the work we do is around trauma-informed care, and not just adverse childhood experiences, but positive childhood experiences as well. We need to be looking at not just the difficulties we face, but promoting those positives and what can we do. So one of the programs we offer is Caring for Children Who've Experienced Trauma. It's a 6-week course. Families come to us 2 hours each week over the course of 6 weeks. And it's really helping understand how children's early beginnings impact them, impact the way they think, the thoughts they have about themselves, the beliefs they have about the world, the mechanisms that they developed that they need for survival that maybe don't serve them so well going on. So some of those children that are so hard to reach or hard to understand, it may be a result of those early childhood experiences that create those challenges for them. And so with any of the programs we do, it's really important for us to give people time for what I call the so what, to reflect on what does this information mean for me and those people I care about, taking the time to actually think about some questions, write down some answers, so that it's not just learning about a topic, but it's learning to apply it to myself as well. Many of the programs we do are funded by contracts through Northeast Michigan Community Health, and that is the case for this program. And one of the interesting things that developed was a secondary course called How Trauma in the Developmental Years Can Impact Adults. As we were doing this program, thinking about children and their challenges, we had many adults in the group say, this sounds like my experience and some of the challenges I face. And what about me? So we took those materials and we developed them into a separate course for adults, same kind of format where they meet with us. At first, we put it into 4 weeks. And we decided, that's really not enough. So now we do it in a course of 5 weeks. But it's really that opportunity to think back about our own experiences, how they have, again, shaped our beliefs, our patterns of how we make decisions, patterns of behavior. And sometimes, they were necessary for our survival, and now they don't serve us very well anymore. So how do we think about changing those? And we know change is hard of all kinds of things, right? Just try when you, getting dressed tomorrow, putting your other pant leg on first, right? Even something so simple as that kind of change. We have such habits that are so ingrained into us so that when we're thinking about how do I do things in a new way, it takes intention, it takes thought, it takes practice, it takes repetition. And so again, with this course, adults are spending some time thinking about, why do I do some of the things that I do in the way that I do them that really don't work very well for me? And how do I recognize them in a different way and do things in a different way? One of the big things we talk about is our thoughts and how they impact us. We have in the neighborhood of 60,000 thoughts a day, and about 80% of those are negative. And about 95% of them repeat. So when you make some little mistake, what do you say to yourself? Often we're very critical and we're very judgmental. So part of learning those new ways is to catch those thoughts. And I don't say this to everybody, but call BS on them. You know, do you say, oh, I'm so stupid when you make some mistake? And you have to stop and say, wait, no, I am not stupid. I'm very capable. I have all of these things that I can do. But so many times we have those repeating thoughts that say, oh, I'm not going to get this right, or I can't do this, so this is going to be too hard, or whatever it is. So part of changing those habits is being able to catch those negative thoughts and question them and replace them with something more positive. This program also is something that is funded for us by Northeast Michigan Community Mental Health. And over the last couple of years, COVID kind of forced us into doing a lot of things differently. We now offer these courses in what we call a blended format. It's ideal if people can come and be in person and they can, chat with other people with similar experiences. And it's so much easier to manage the questions and the things that our people are thinking about. But we also serve a large geographic area. So where for a while we were kind of forced to do these things virtually, now we see the value of continuing that, but doing them both at the same time. So we will hold the live in-person classes, just like you're doing here today. There are people here and there are people joining by Zoom. Because some of these topics can be challenging for people, we always make sure that the part of the role of our Zoom monitor is making sure people are okay. And that if they're struggling with something, that they have immediate support. So we, through Zoom, use a breakout room where somebody can actually go and have a private conversation with somebody if they're feeling the need, if they're feeling like, this has really got me upset. I just need to talk to someone, because we never want to have anybody attending our programs and feeling unsupported or feeling like this has created more difficulty for them. Sometimes my family says, why do you do this stuff? You're talking about trauma and suicide, because it's about the hope. It's about the hope and the healing. That's what these classes are not about, to talk about the doom and gloom. They're to talk about how did we get where we are and how do we make choices from here that can help us live better lives. So here's the example of the goals of the workshop for the adult course. It's recognizing what trauma has meant to us, how it has impacted us, helping people feel empowered to make a difference, to be able to make different choices. Our emotions are such a big part of that. We're just not really good as a society talking about our emotions and being able to identify them and understand how they impact us. Being able to take a look at ourselves and say, what's about my behavior that maybe I would rather not be doing? Always looking at our strengths. What do we have to build on? And then if some kind of treatment is needed, how do you do an assessment for that? And how do you seek that help? And then again, taking care of yourself, because that's so fundamental to absolutely everything we do as humans. So again, just a little piece of that adult course, helping people recognize why do we do some of those things that aren't so helpful? How do we adjust those unhelpful behaviors and attitudes? Because it's not just about our behaviors, it's about our beliefs, it's about our attitudes, it's about all of it. How to help people get the help they need. How do we not feel like, this is the hand I've been dealt. This is the way things are. Not being stuck in the past, recognizing that we can make a difference for our future and make a different choice. And just becoming more satisfied and content with life. That we don't have to feel like things are so dragging us down, that we can challenge those negative thoughts. So we also do workshops for groups. We've been fortunate to do a lot of work in schools. We sometimes will go in to a particular, like Alpena is a great example of having, a middle school, a high school, but lots of elementary schools. We can go into a particular elementary school and spend time with staff over the course of several different meetings, several different gatherings, and talk about the basics of trauma-informed care. And then always talking about strategies. What do we do to best serve the kids in our class who are struggling? We're willing to do that. Some schools, they like to do that early morning before the kiddos get there. Some of it's after school. We'll pretty much come anytime, anywhere that it works for people. Perhaps there's other groups of people as well that are interested in those kind of topics. And so we're able to customize those workshops. Again, one of the things that, because we're independent, we're able to do a little more easily. We also do a lot of work around suicide prevention and intervention. And one of the things, again, that we're able to do because of our independence is facilitate those groups. Others perhaps have mandates that don't allow them the time to be able to do that. So we can bring the team together. We'll make sure they're communicating well, make sure everybody has the resources and the tools that they need. Alpena has an Alpena suicide prevention team that is functioning really quite well. We've gained some new members in the last months that have made a big difference in our impact in the community. And that group is plans one of its major events is a suicide prevention walk that happens each September, begins at Bayview Park, makes a loop around Alpena and back. It's a time to raise awareness about suicide concerns, but also to connect people with resources and connect people with support. That group is also working right now on looking at how do we bring better information to our young people. We are investigating several different tools that can be used during school time with students. And so again, we have access to a lot of resources. We can look at a lot of different tools, see what works best. The schools are very much on board for making this happen, but we know that it's not enough to just educate our students, our teens. Parents need the information. They need to know how to support their kids. The staff need to be able to recognize when somebody is struggling and what to do and what kind of resources are available. So it's this big picture of the students, the parents, and the staff, and how do we use all the different tools that are available to make sure we're really having an impact. I mean, it's not something that's just a one and done where you go in and talk for an hour and it's over. This is an ongoing thing. People need support and information on a regular basis. One of the specific programs we do is called Safe Talk. It's developed by a group called Living Works out of Canada. They are really wonderful at using the best research to develop their programs, to really think about how people connect and relate. Safe Talk is 4 hours, and it helps people recognize when somebody may be at risk for suicide, when they may be having thoughts of suicide, how to ask that difficult question. And we need to be very clear and direct about, are you thinking about suicide? Are you thinking about taking your life? If we ask a fuzzy question, right, we get fuzzy answers. And then how to connect people to resources. Who are the resources in the community? What I love about Living Works is when it talks about suicide and recognizing someone who has a concern with suicide. So often we use the term warning signs, but warning signs to me indicates like flashing lights or orange cones or something. And when we're talking about suicide, it's so much more subtle than that. Living Works uses the term invitations. Someone is sending out an invitation and hoping that we will recognize their invitation and respond. An invitation that says, I'm struggling here. I need some help and support. Once in a while, it may be as bold as somebody saying, I'm really struggling and I'm thinking about suicide. But that's rare, right? There's all these other little things that we're going to see, we're going to notice, we're going to hear them saying. Our spidey sense tells us something that's going on. That's Living Works' approach to helping us recognize suicide concerns. Another program that Living Works does is called ASSIST, Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training. It's a full 2 days. And it goes beyond, it does all those things that we do in Safe Talk, but it really helps us examine ourselves as helpers. And one of the things we spend a good amount of time on is thinking about our own attitudes and beliefs related to suicide and to helping other people. not because Living Work says, here's what your attitude needs to be, to help us recognize how sometimes our attitudes can be helpful when we're trying to help somebody else. And sometimes we may have an attitude that we need to park in our back pocket to help. Okay. People generally don't cuss around me because they know I don't like it. Right? It irritates me, it offends me. But that's one of those things that if somebody were in distress and they were cussing at me, that would not be the time for me to say, wait a minute, I don't appreciate that language. That's the time for me to park that and just listen. Okay, so that's just a simple example of, how assist goes deeper in helping us understand. It's not only recognizing when somebody's in distress, but then it's being able to spend time with them in that distress, where we're really listening, where we're helping them uncover what brought them here. Not in the same kind of way that a therapist or a counselor is going to, but we're allowing them to talk about what challenges they've faced that brought them to thinking about suicide. Because while we're doing that, we're listening carefully, that we're hearing reasons that we can connect them to life. Sometimes I hear people say, oh, I wouldn't know how to talk somebody out of suicide. Nobody ever talks someone out of suicide. But when you're listening carefully and feeding back to them some of the things you're hearing, they may talk themselves out of suicide, or they will recognize, I do have some reasons for living. That's our job as helpers when we're assist trained, helping people find those reasons for living, and then helping them get to a point where they feel like, I'm not fully maybe giving up on this idea, but for now, I want to stay safe and explore some solutions. So that's where assist goes a little deeper. And it then is also about connecting to resources. But it goes a lot deeper than most other things. That's why it's a full 2 days. Excellent program if you have the opportunity. You see here in this graphic, the pathway for assisting life. This is kind of the roadmap that's laid out in the assist training that helps us as helpers know, how do you walk through this process with somebody? And a big part of that is listening to their story. It's not just asking the question and getting them to resources. There's a big portion there of spending time with them in that very difficult place, allowing them to be heard and understood and helping them find a reason to hang on. One of the things you might be interested in, either as the all group or as another group you're part of, there is a documentary film called Suicide: The Ripple Effect. Kevin Hines, at the age of 19, attempted to take his life by jumping from the Golden Gate Bridge. Few people have survived that jump. He did. And one of the things Kevin says is the moment his hands and feet left that rail, he knew that this is not what he wanted. And so now he's dedicated his life to talking about his own mental illness, his own struggles, how people tried to help him, what people did that was helpful, what people did that maybe wasn't as helpful, but giving people that hope. And when he talks about the ripple effect, it's the ripple effect that we can have as we're promoting that hope and healing. So a great opportunity, again, Community Mental Health purchased the rights to this movie so that we can show it repeatedly in the community. And we always combine that with a discussion afterward, because this is a pretty powerful movie. And we don't want people just watching the movie and leaving without an opportunity to kind of talk about what are they thinking and feeling. One of the things that came from Kevin's experience is his family and some others. Actually, now there is a safety net, a physical net, a physical barrier that makes it much more difficult for somebody to take their life in that way. We promote mental wellness in a number of different ways. Again, these are funded by Community Mental Health. And when people from the 4 counties that CMH and that we both serve participate, these programs are free. There is a fee if somebody is coming from outside of those 4 counties, but most of these programs are free. And one of them is mental health first aid. There is a version that is for adults in thinking about adults. There's also a version called Youth Mental Health First Aid that is for adults in thinking about young people. And again, how do we recognize, not diagnose, but how do we recognize when somebody may be having a mental health concern, either when it's just getting started or maybe they're farther down the path. But again, being able to recognize and learn some basics about being able to help. So we learn some action steps, and we're going to look at those in a moment, both in crisis situations and non-crisis situations. We actually, again, talk about self-care, but we have an opportunity to do a little bit of practice too with knowing how to apply these steps. And here are the steps that we learn. Assessing is part of it all the way through, right? You're always taking a look at, is this a crisis situation? Is it not? What's going on here? Again, we're not diagnosing. We're just assessing the situation and getting a sense of what can I do and what's appropriate. So how do we approach? How do we assess? A huge piece, listening non-judgmentally. Isn't that something we all desire? But sometimes we're not so good at. And I think that's especially true for us as adults when we're working with young people. We tend to jump in and try to fix it. And that's not what they need. It's not what they want. It's not what our peers want. We need to sometimes just be able to zip it and listen and let people tell us what's important to them. Giving reassurance, it's not about advice. It's not about telling people what to do. It's really about giving hope. Encouraging professional help, but also encouraging those things that we can all do on our own to manage our mental wellness. So again, youth mental health first aid, that's offered in a variety of ways. It can be done all in person. It can be done all online. It can be done part online and part in person. So we really too, we match that to who's the audience, what kind of time frame do they have, how does it work for them to deliver that program. Man therapy, we're going to see if this link works. It's not a program that we put on, but it's something we promote. And it's one of those things you kind of have to experience to get a sense of it. So even though you don't hear the volume, you get a sense just by seeing this little clip of how man therapy operates. Oh, you're not seeing it. I am. Is it coming through the Zoom link? No. Well, that's okay. It uses humor. It's rather irreverent. They have what they call a 20-point head inspection that is really kind of a self-assessment tool, but it's understanding that, for many men, talking about their feelings is not a common thing. It's not a comfortable thing. And so man therapy uses humor, it uses sports references, it uses hunting references to have men think about, how is my mental health doing? And when they do this 20-point head inspection, if it indicates that there's some concerns there, it steers them to resources. So I think one of those things just worth mentioning because it's a different approach. Again, it's like, how do we meet people where they are instead of saying, here's the information, here's the answers, take it or leave it. It's how do we meet people in a way that they can take in the information. We also do a program on fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. This is one we've been doing since the 90s. I like to say since the last century, because when we talk about turn of the century, we assume that means 1900, right? Well, we've had another turn of the century. But we offer a support group for families. We help facilitate diagnosis. Diagnosis is a very complicated process, so that doesn't happen in our local community, but we help connect people to resources for that. We really can walk alongside families if this is something they're struggling with and help, again, connect them to resources, help them know things that they can do for themselves in their own situation, and training and education across the board. I just had the opportunity to train some court staff, not only in the basics, but about strategies. And so here's the kinds of topics we'll cover in the trainings we do. The basic information, how prenatal alcohol impacts the brain, The consequences are many and varied. And each person who's impacted is impacted in a different way, both in the types of struggles that they have and the severity of those struggles. And so helping people understand that broad range is so important. Helping people understand what is the process for screening and diagnosis. Not that, I'm going to present a training and people are going to be prepared to do it. But so important, again, focusing what are the strategies for success. This is lifelong. It doesn't go away. You can't just take a pill or have a surgery, but there are things you can do to make the situation better. Thinking about how does it fit with social justice considerations, depending on who the audience is. We often talk in terms of children, but this is not something people outgrow. So many adults we are interacting with may be challenged as well. And always, again, for us in any of the workshops we do, how does this apply? It's taking some time to think about, what do I know? How do I put those pieces together? So what are some of those basics about prenatal alcohol exposure? Whatever, and this is apparently the new politically correct thing to say, when the pregnant person, I struggle with that a little bit. But if a woman drinks when she's pregnant, that alcohol goes right to whether it's the embryonic stage or the fetal stage. There's no protective barrier there. So within minutes, the baby's blood alcohol content will be the same as the mother's. We just need to let that sink in. One of the challenges is, though, half of all pregnancies are unplanned. We're not just talking about teenage girls. Across all women of childbearing ages, about half of all pregnancies are unplanned. So often the challenges can be there before a woman even knows she's pregnant. So this isn't about shaming or blaming. It's just about understanding the facts. So how do we avoid this if we can at all? Doesn't matter what kind of alcohol it is. I've grown up in this region. I know, I think we're changing our attitudes a little, but for a long time, it was like, well, it's only beer. Like beer's not, if you're not drinking hard liquor, then that's okay. It's not but they all have the same ability to cause difficulties. Think about Maggie when I see things like this. Maggie was a pioneer in doing some of that alcohol research at a time when not many women were involved in that, but our Maggie Clay was doing that. And this is something that shocks people. When you compare alcohol to all other drugs of abuse, alcohol by far has more negative impacts on that growing, whether it's, again, embryo or fetus, than any other drug. People assume, heroin is going to be so much worse. Cocaine is going to be so much worse. None of those things are good. But alcohol by far has the most ability to cause lifelong damage for that individual. So yes, it does matter that we're talking about this, and we're helping people understand that alcohol and pregnancy don't mix. We're not saying don't ever drink. We're saying during this 9 months, or if you are considering getting pregnant, if you could get pregnant, if you're sexually active, use appropriate birth control, or don't drink during that time. Do everything we can to protect that individual. We also do a number of things around positive youth development. One of the programs we do is in Rogers City. I've been doing that since the middle 90s as well. We have second generation kids in this program. It's called Natural Helpers. And it's based on the fact that when young people have a problem, the first person they go to is their friends. Not that they don't talk to their parents or other adults, but they go to their friends first and most often. And so we identify kids in the school who others have told us. We ask, who do you trust and who would you talk to if you had a problem? And they give us names. And we invite those people to be part of the program. And then we provide them with some training on how to be better helpers. It's not about giving advice. It's not telling your friends what to do. It's helping your friends think through their situation. What's going on? What are my choices? What are the consequences of the choices, good or bad, that I might make? How do I come to a good decision? Who are those adults in the community that can help? When is a problem that my friend is having beyond my ability to help? And how do I know then to get them help in some other place? So one of the things we do there, and we also work with a lot of others to provide, parenting programs, parenting information, just getting really good, solid information into the hands of people. My Strength is a tool that is made available to everyone in this community by Community Mental Health. It's an app that you can, load onto your phone, and it will give you daily reminders of self-care. If you're interested in particular topics, certain sorts of mental illness, certain sorts of ways of maintaining your health. It's free, it's available, it's simple, but this is a quote there too. We have to start small, right? We have something maybe we want to be different, and we know we can't just leap from here to there. But any small steps we take along the way is a positive and a good thing. One of the ways you can connect with us is through our Facebook page. When we set it up, somebody else already had the name Partners in Prevention somewhere across the country. So you search for us by going to facebook.com Northeast Michigan. So interactions with all of you. I know you have, I love the whole idea of Association of Lifelong Learners. My favorite question is, how does that work? Just my favorite question. My second favorite question is, so what? Because being curious and learning, it's one of the things I volunteer in a preschool. It's magnificent. I love it because they're always so full of questions and sometimes answers. I learn from them too. But being involved and continuing to learn. But if you had the opportunity, if you had an interest in supporting us, some of the things that we sometimes it's just bodies, helping get things put together. Now that we're using technology so much more, that's a wonderful way to be able to help our efforts in providing that technical support. When we're doing in-person trainings, it's always wonderful to have a host there who can help people feel comfortable and get them settled in. Right now, we're preparing for another round of the 6-week Caring for Children who've experienced trauma. And so we're getting all those materials together. Sometimes we have resources that just need freshening up. That's something people can do. Many of the workshops that we do, the mental health first aids, the suicide prevention, we always have a person there who's available just as what we call a safety monitor, just to kind of keep an eye on and to see is somebody in distress and just needs to step out and have somebody to sit with them and chat. So that's a really wonderful thing that people can do. Sometimes it requires that you've been already trained in that program, which of course just makes sense. Our board of directors helps guide everything we do, helping set our direction, helping manage all of the details that go in with running a nonprofit. Just being an ambassador and promoting the things that we're doing, putting up flyers, sharing things. Much of what we do is grant funded. And so when we're submitting grants, it's really wonderful to have somebody with a fresh set of eyes to read that over, to make sure it makes sense, that we haven't left out some important pieces of information, just to making sure that, that they're complete and that they're clear. We really are in the need of developing a website. And so internally, that's not something we have the skills for. We're working on that and we're getting better at using some of those tools. But that's something that we're really looking for, is someone that can help us build a website, in part to share the wonderful resources that we have. There are links to so many good things, and we would really like to be a hub for many of those things. We know that for people registering for our programs can be awkward and clumsy because we're a small staff. We don't always have somebody in the office. So if they're calling to register, sometimes it's just leaving a message. We would love to be able to do that online. It would be so simple for people to just click and there you're done. And so that's another one of the reasons we want to develop a website. We have a lot of interesting things that we do in communicating with people. For example, with the suicide prevention work, we had someone who's a part of that team who did a survey with students about their mental health and what they wish adults knew about their mental health. And I feel like that information is a gold mine. And one of the things that the teens said is, it's real, it's a concern. We do have serious mental health concerns, and we really do want to talk to our parents, but we don't know how to do that. And we have parents saying, that's important, but we're not sure how to bring up the topic either. So you've got, young people and parents who both want to talk to each other and don't necessarily know how to get that conversation started. So one of the things we did was develop a flyer, a graphic that has some of the quotes from the students. A young woman that I know did a picture for us, did a drawing of a young woman. And so we have these quotes from the students, and then on the other side, we have tips for parents about how to talk. If you're somebody who enjoys that kind of putting those graphics together, that would be a wonderful thing. And then our board, not only being on our board, but being advisors for the technology, for human resources, for all those things, that a board is responsible for. Connections. Financial, like I said, much of what we do is funded by grants, not everything. So contributions are important, but also people's connections to the community. Who are those employers that might want to train their staff? We have some pretty big employers here that I had someone contact me not long before COVID, and then that all got derailed, and now we're trying to get back on board because they experienced a suicide death of one of their staff members and said, we would like to get our staff trained. Being connections with businesses, with organizations, with facilities that can host workshops. We try to keep our costs down as much as we can. Are there congregations that would be interested in hosting a movie screening or hosting a training at their facility? So questions, I know I've been rattling on and for a long time, but are there other things you'd like to know, things you're curious about? We want to spend a little bit of time talking about 211 as well. So I want to give you the opportunity.
First program you mentioned the trauma, children with trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Now, are the people that come to that parents, or are they?
Yeah, so the question is the caring for children who've experienced trauma. We do have parents, we have grandparents, we have foster parents. We also have childcare providers. We have staff from other agencies. So that's really open to any adult who's interacting with children who've experienced trauma. So it's useful across the board. Great question. Thank you for asking that.
And I thought of too when you were speaking about people of the teens themselves expressing what they need. Many, many years ago, and I think it was through Hope House or Huron House, St. John's did a program where they had workshops that parents could go to and the students. So like I would go to one on parents and the teens would be speaking. My kids would go to one where the parents were saying how they felt.
That's a wonderful.
Really learned a lot.
That's a wonderful idea. And as we develop this thing around suicide prevention, we want to make sure that we're giving people those opportunities to come together and to learn from each other. So a little bit about 211. So pretty much everybody knows what 911 is. Okay, emergency services. I'm not sure we use 411 anymore, but it used to be like, how do I find connection with somebody? It was almost like a phone directory kind of thing. 211 is a little different. 211 is our link to Health and Human Services. It's toll free. It's online. You can get to it either by you just simply dialing 211 on your phone. What I love about 211, and so I've got this link here, but I'm based on our prior experience, I'm guessing it's not going to open up for you all like it did for me. What if I go to sharing my screen? We'll see if that works better. There it is. So you see the web address, www.211nemichigan.org for Northeast Michigan. There are call centers in a number of different places, but this is really about health and human services. Whether you're new to the community or you've lived here all your life, if you're wondering, I need to know where I can get help with utilities assistance. I need to know, I want to connect with somebody who provides mental health services. I need to know, I got house repairs. Who helps me with that? You can call 211 and they will talk with you about what your concerns are and help connect you to resources. So they have this massive database of information. It's up to us as locals to make sure our information is there, that our local resources have their information in it. But what I think is so unique about 211 is the way the operators are trained to ask the right questions to help you get to what you need. I'll give you an example. I worked part-time somewhere several years ago, and this woman called and was saying, you know, I need help with food. We don't have enough food. Where can I go? It happened to be in a nearby community, so we told her about the local food pantry, what we knew about that and when it operated. We were able to look up a phone number and give her that phone number. That operates just like every other week. And so that wasn't working for her. There were a number of things that we're able to say, but they didn't suit her need. And as she's hanging up the phone, the person talking to her hears her say, "It's not about me, it's about my kids." And she hangs up the phone. Well, there was free breakfast and lunch every day offered at the school. The person at our end of the phone wasn't trained to ask the right questions. 211 would have gotten to the bottom of that. You know, they would have been asking questions in a way to really find out the need. We didn't know to give this person this information because we didn't understand that there were children and, you know, the 211 operators will help you get to the bottom of what you need, even if you don't really know what questions to ask. The database is statewide. So I may be living here, but have concerns for a family member who lives in another part of the state. I can help them get connected by calling 211. So it's really an awesome service. And you can see you can call, you can text, you can call and you can actually chat with somebody, not in a phone way, in an electronic. Their database is also available to you on the website where you can go and search and look for what you need. You're not going to have the same skills as those operators to find what you need, but there are many ways to connect. And there are just, they just have so much information to resources. They also have information on local events. Like in our community, there are pop-up food pantries. You know, they know about those as well. So it's not just the ongoing services, but the information they collect tells them about who's eligible, what are their hours of operation. So it's not just that you call and they give you a phone number. They can help you really get to the heart of who can serve what you need. Now, sometimes there isn't someone, right? And I printed out a report about, this is Alpena County's information for the last year. So the majority of the information that they helped with was, they had 18% of their calls, their referrals they made were referring to housing and shelter, 17% utilities, 6% food, almost 6% health supportive services, temporary financial assistance, health screenings. I mean, that you can get a report in your community on what people are calling and asking for. They also do a report on unmet needs. And sometimes there's similar things. So the number one unmet need was housing and shelter. It was the number one thing that they were able to help with. So was it that the person just wasn't eligible? Was it that the services were all being utilized and there wasn't anything? So not only do they provide, this information, but locals, you can use this to say, so what are people looking for in our community? What's this help they're looking for? And what are they able to receive and what are they not able to receive? Something else that was in my mind and it just went zoom right out. Hopefully it'll come back in. But absolutely, you actually support 211. It's a part of everyone's phone bill. There's funding there. Each county has a representative. Joe Gentry is actually the representative for Alpena County. I was coming today, and so we put a piece of that here. But we want to make sure people know that it's there and it's available, and you can call it anytime to get information on some kind of services you're looking for. Any questions about 211 that I can answer? I know our time is just about up.
Where is the 211?
Where does it live? Yes. So the call center that services our area is actually based in Midland. Okay, so many of the calls are going to go to Midland, but I know that they are working to hire a person who lives in this region who will probably be able to work from home to be a 211. I call them an operator. I'm sure they have a better name for that, but that you would be calling and talking to someone here locally. But it's all about that database and how well that's kept up. So even if like you're part of a church who provides food services or some sort of service, it's important that you're connecting with 211 and getting that information in that database so that they can help people find you when they need that help. Any, just in the couple of minutes that we have left, any thoughts, questions?
First thing.
Yeah.
Wonder how.
And I didn't bring some with me. I should have today. They have, there are magnets, there are little pads of paper that we can just make sure everybody has that information. And all of us, we sometimes have to hear things several times before it sticks, or it's when we need it that we really remember. So yeah, anytime you have the opportunity to let people, it's completely free. It's not like people are now suddenly in your business. They're not going to follow you. You're not going to get sales calls as a result of this. The other important thing to know is if it were an emergency, they would hotwire you to that. If I was thinking of taking my life and I called 211, they would not say, here's the number, hang up and call. They would direct link me. So there are many services like that they are wired to so that, they're answering those calls appropriately. Just made me think about, there is a national suicide hotline number, and in July, that number is going to switch to 988. So one of the reasons why it's taken a while to roll that out is not just getting the phone companies all hooked up and making that work. The government, the federal government, has invested a lot of time and money in making sure that there are people to answer those calls. Because when it goes from 1-800-273-8255 to 988, which will be not only a hotline, a suicide hotline number, but a crisis number, a support number in general, they expect that the number of calls is going to go up considerably. And so they've been working very hard to make sure that there are people in place and services in place so that if someone calls, they're not put on hold. Or, and I've heard of that happening with people calling a crisis line, that the infrastructure is there to make sure we can meet that need. I so appreciate your time. I don't know if that clock up there is super accurate. I want to be mindful and respectful of your time. And I so appreciate this opportunity Thank you for inviting me here to let you tell us about the great things we're doing at Partners in Prevention and to make sure you're aware of 211 and the importance of that. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
very much for